Today's video is sponsored by Corsair and the new Hydro X series. If you're keen to get into custom liquid cooling but you don't know where to start, check out their custom cooling configurator. And this is a useful tool for even experienced builders. The interactive and intuitive configurator allows you to visualize how the end product will look, and most important of all, allow you to quickly and easily work out all the cooling bits you'll need to make your ultimate gaming PC. For more information, please check the link in the video description.
Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. It's double trouble here at the Hardware Unboxed offices because I'm reviewing not one, but two monitors in today's video. To be fair, both these monitors are pretty similar, but it does mean double the data points, which for the blue benchmark graph fans will be good news. The two monitors in question are the Pixio PXC243 and Pixio PXC273, which are entry-level 1080p VA monitors which are being advertised as premier esports gaming displays. The PXC243 is a 24-inch option and the PXC273 is a 27-inch version. Both have 144Hz refresh rates, 1800R curved panels, and adaptive sync with low frame rate compensation. What really caught my eye about these displays is the price. $160 for the 24-inch model and $200 for the 27-incher is right at the bottom end of pricing for these sorts of displays. The PXC243 in particular is cheaper than most popular options like the AOC C24G1 and MSI MAG241C, and similar to budget TN offerings. The PXC273 isn't quite at the same outright best level of value, but at $200 it's still very competitive given its hardware. The design for both monitors is basically identical except for the size. It's a really basic construction that doesn't really excite me. It's mostly standard matte black plastic. The stand clips together in a bit of an awkward way, but it seems to work fine. I mean, it's put together well overall. There are no obvious gaps in the seams and all that, but this is very obviously an entry-level monitor design. I like the slim bezel approach though. If you want an adjustable stand, you'll probably have to look elsewhere or buy a VESA mount, as we're only getting tilt functionality here, although that is quite common among budget displays. The array of ports is also very basic. DisplayPort, HDMI and DVI here, plus an audio output. Not sure whether DVI was really necessary here. I feel a second HDMI port probably would have been better. Luckily, we are getting a directional toggle for the on-screen display. Bit of an unusual layout here, but it seems to work. Not much functionality in here aside from basic color controls and a single cheek crosshair. Fine controls over things like low blue light or shadow boosting just isn't available here. You'll have already seen it here in the B-roll, but it's also worth pointing out that these two monitors are curved, which is standard for Samsung's SVA panels. If you want VA with these specs, you'll have to put up with the curve, while TN and IPS options tend to be flat. The curve isn't terrible. I'd personally prefer if it was flat, but it works fine for gaming. I just think the curve makes more sense for larger monitors or ultra-wides. Let's get into performance now. Both of these displays are 1080p with a 144Hz refresh rate, so that's perfect for entry-level gaming these days. But these are VA panels which aren't known for fast response times, so let's see how they stack up. First up, we have the PXC243. The overdrive modes here are pretty straightforward. We only have on and off, so no fiddling is required. The off mode is obviously very slow and I wouldn't recommend using it, so we'll focus here on performance with overdrive enabled. The 24-inch variant isn't exactly a speed demon. 7.55 milliseconds gray to gray average, reasonably low error rate, and while some transitions do have a large overshoot, in general inverse ghosting isn't an issue. The panel is rated as having a 3 millisecond response time, which I guess makes sense as the quickest transitions I measured were down around 2 milliseconds, but really this is a typical VA experience. Dark level smearing here isn't too bad. We do get some very slow transitions right at the bottom end, but a 10 millisecond average here is on the better end for a VA. What's more concerning is a bit of mid-level smearing, which isn't common, but you can see here some transitions as slow as 13 to 14 milliseconds in the mid-range. It would have been nice to see the overdrive algorithm tackle that a bit better. Also a concern is refresh rate compliance. Only 50% of transitions occur within the 6.94 millisecond refresh window for 144Hz, and that only increases to 70% when we add in a 1 millisecond tolerance. Ideally, I'd want to see this value above 80%. As it stands, the PXC243 is bottlenecked by response times. It performs more like a 100 to 120 Hz monitor. Let's change gears here and look at the 27-inch PXC273. I won't bother showing overdrive disabled results, as again the monitor is very slow. The mode to use is definitely overdrive on. What's key to note here is that the performance is different to the PXC243. This makes sense as it uses a different panel, and while the panel is from the same family and has similar specs, it's always important to know that you can't just take results from from one size of monitor and apply it to a larger or smaller version. It doesn't really work like that. Each monitor size has different performance characteristics in some areas, particularly response times. With that said, some of the general aspects to performance remain here, like mid-level smearing, and error performance is similar with a low error rate and not significant inverse ghosting. However, the PXC273 is slower overall at a 7.85 milliseconds gray-to-gray average and has worse dark level smearing with more transitions affected. It also is less compliant with its 144Hz refresh rate. We're now down at below 60% even with a 1 millisecond tolerance. This is more like a 100Hz monitor in its behavior. Let's see how these monitors stack up against the competition. It's clear that if you go down the TN route, you'll be getting better performance. Monitors like the Acer KG251QF and the LG 24GL600F are both budget 1080p 144Hz TN panels and perform significantly better than these VAs. In fact, both these Pixio monitors sit towards the back end of our VA panels in terms of performance. What's also disappointing is where they end up against other budget VAs. The PXC243, for example, is much slower than the Viotech GN24C, which is one of the best performing VAs we've tested. The PXC273 is slower than the AOC C27G1, which is one of the big competitors given they're very similar in terms of price and specs. In terms of dark level average, not the worst result here given most 1440p VAs fare worse, but Pixio's offerings are still edged out by the AOC C27G1 and especially the Viotech GN24C. Dark smearing is basically a non-issue for the GN24C, whereas it is definitely present with the PXC243. Overdrive is quite clearly something Pixio need to work on with their monitor lineup, as you can see from the refresh rate compliance chart. Again, we're seeing these new Pixio PXC monitors handily beaten by the AOC and Viotech monitors we've been talking about, both of which provide true 144Hz. Pixio only offering one overdrive mode here I feel has hurt them. If they were more aggressive, they probably could have competed better. These Pixio monitors do have an advantage in error rates, especially for the 27-inch variant, which again suggests perhaps a second overdrive mode could have tightened up performance. The C27G1 does stray into inverse ghosting territory compared to the PXC273, but I'd still recommend the C27G1 overall if you're after the best response times. The one advantage Pixio monitors tend to have is extremely good input lag. Both the PXC243 and PXC273 have less than 1 milliseconds of processing lag, which compares favorably to other options on the market, whether we're talking about other VAs or TNs. However, the entire lag in the chain, including response time lag, is only mid-table thanks to slower than average response times. Power consumption is pretty normal here, nothing unusual from either option when calibrated. The PXC243 is pretty efficient in particular if that's important to you. Like with response times, color performance differs between the two monitors as well. The PXC243 is your standard sRGB panel, while the PXC273's panel is actually capable of 89% DCI-P3 coverage. However, for this review we'll be focusing on sRGB performance. The PXC243 is decent out of the box. My unit had a slightly too cold color temperature, as you can see from the CCT curve average of 7020K, but adherence to the sRGB gamma curve and a good delta E average of 2.46 is promising. This continues with delta E averages in the 2.0 to 2.5 range for saturation and ColorChecker, which is a great result, and that's partly down to not having a larger than sRGB gamut. Given already decent default performance here, there's not much that can be done with settings tweaks to improve performance. I only saw minor gains from adjusting the white point. Where things really improve is with a full calibration, where naturally we can get sub 1.0 delta E's. At the very top end of performance, we do see some fall off because the panel is only capable of 95% sRGB coverage, but overall this is pretty decent. The PXC273 is much less accurate out of the box. My unit shipped with a slight green tint, but crucially its gamma is all wrong, adhering to gamma 2.4 rather than 2.2. A delta E average of 4.24 in Grayscale is the result. We're also getting a bit of oversaturation due to the wider than sRGB gamut the panel has, which leads to saturation and ColorChecker delta E averages above 3.0. This is pretty standard for a gaming monitor, but obviously not as good as the PXC243. There are a few performance tweaks that can be made. The big one is switching the gamma mode from gamma 2 to gamma 1, and then also performing a few white point tweaks, as you can see here. This results in a much improved Grayscale delta E average near 2.0, and this brings down saturation performance to a sub 2.0 delta E, while delivering strong results in ColorChecker as well. For a few simple OSD settings changes, that's a pretty strong result. Like with the PXC243, we can take things further with a full calibration. This allows us to clamp the gamut down to sRGB in supported applications, as well as tighten up Delta E performance. The PXC273 has a better panel in general for colors, so it does perform a bit better here, and you have access to a wider gamut if needed. If you're interested in getting our ICC profiles we created for these monitors, as usual, that's available for our Patreon members. Brightness for both monitors sits a little shy of 300 nits when calibrated, so that's on the lower end of the charts, but as you can see from other VA panels, it's fairly standard for this technology. Where we really get the benefits of VA is with black levels and contrast ratios. Both Pixio PXC monitors perform really well here. The PXC273 is around that 3200 to 1 mark, which is similar to the AOC C27G1. However, the PXC243 really pushes things up to over 4000 to 1, which is well above the Viotech GN24C. I do wonder whether the PXC243 and GN24C use different panels, both have similar specs and both use Samsung VA panels. However, quite clearly the PXC243 has a superior contrast ratio but worse response time performance. And finally, we have uniformity. Both monitors suffer from weak uniformity, which is pretty standard for these curved Samsung VA panels. The 24-inch model is a bit better than the 27-inch, but really you won't be blown away by how even the experience is. At the end of the day, I really like testing entry-level monitors because they are some of the most popular monitors on the market, and I always like to see good hardware get cheaper over time. Certainly with these 1080p high refresh VA monitors, pricing has come down from over $220 last year to well under $180 this year, which is very decent in a highly competitive market. Unfortunately, both the PXC243 and PXC273 are mediocre options. Pixio tends to be quite aggressive with their pricing, and no doubt both of these monitors are cheap for the specifications you get. The problem is that, unlike some of their other great value offerings that we've seen, there is a lot of competition in this market. Take the PXC243 for example. On face value, it's not bad for a $160 monitor. Excellent contrast ratio, decent out-of-the-box color performance, virtually no processing lag, mid-tier response times for a VA. But the Viotech GN24C is also on the market and also costs just $160 now, down from a launch price of $220. It has significantly better response times, which is key for gaming, and that's why I did get my recommendation. The PXC273 is in a similar boat. Not bad for a $200 27-inch high-refresh VA monitor, but the AOC C27G1 is now just $190, so $10 cheaper, and it too is a bit faster than the PXC273 thanks to better tuned Overdrive. AOC's offering is also much more widely available. While Pixio only sells their monitors in a few select countries, AOC is available in Europe, and I'd have no trouble recommending the C27G1 or C24G1 as budget 1080p high-refresh VA monitors. Where I feel Pixio has really let themselves down is only offering one fairly mediocre overdrive mode in these monitors, which has led to slow performance relative to other options. A bit more tweaking here, especially to get response times up within the 6.94 milliseconds refresh window required for a 144Hz monitor, would have gone a long way to getting a solid recommendation. Unfortunately, it'd take a bit of a price cut to recommend these monitors. If they were maybe $20 to $30 cheaper than other alternatives, I think that would be fine. And then on top of that, they aren't even available in most countries, which as usual is a big complaint I have about Pixio. I've liked a few of Pixio's more high-end monitors, but these new budget offerings are a miss. That's it for this review. I've got a few more budget monitor reviews coming up, so stay tuned for that and subscribe if you want to see them. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Consider supporting us on Patreon or buying some merch stored at hardwareunboxed.com, and I'll catch you in the next one.